Hello and a very warm welcome to Bowness-on-Solway here in Cumbria. Today Bowness-on-Solway is a quiet, sleepy Cumbrian village on the Solway Firth. But 2,000 years ago it was an important Roman settlement. It was the western terminus of Hadrian's Wall, which was constructed in 122 AD. It was also home to the second largest fort along Hadrian's Wall, second only to the fort in Carlisle. Today, Bowness-on-Solway marks the start point of the Hadrian's Wall path, or if you're doing the route from east to west, the end point of the Hadrian's Wall path. But the Hadrian's Wall line of defences didn't just end here at Bowness-on-Solway. They extended further down the coast of Cumbria. And what I want to do is take you on a journey from Bowness-on-Solway, here on Hadrian's Wall, all the way down to Ravenglass, and then to one of the most spectacular Roman remains, not only in Cumbria, but I would suggest anywhere in the country, Hardknott Fort at the top of Estelle. Hadrian's Wall was a marvel of ancient engineering, stretching 73 miles from Bowness-on-Solway to Wallsend and reaching over 15 feet high. It was a formidable structure and marked the northern frontier of the Roman Empire. Although a really important place on Hadrian's Wall, there is actually nothing of the old Roman fort left today here in Bowness. It's all built underneath the village. But if you do look carefully, you can spot some signs of the old Roman fort here. There is a visitor centre here in Bowness, but unfortunately it is currently closed and there's no information about when it opens. Today Bowness is a very attractive little village and has a number of places for people to stay who might be doing the Hadrian's Wall path. But 2,000 years ago I would have been standing in the middle of the fort. So we're right in the heart of the fort here in Bowness. And we're now going to make our way to the village church, which itself is an interesting place to visit. Although this church is over 800 years old, it is actually constructed with stones that go right back to the Roman Empire. So they did what we do today. They recycled and reused what was at hand. And for them, that meant recycling the stones, the bricks from Hadrian's Wall and the fort here at Bowness. There's another interesting piece of history relating to this village on the side of the pub, and this is a half net, and it is used to catch sea trout and Atlantic salmon between the months of June and September, and it gets its name half, H-A-A-F, from an old Norse word meaning channel, so channel fishing, and it was believed to have been introduced by the Vikings. Again, if you look for it, you can see some further clues of the old Roman fort, as this house here is called the fort, built on top of Maia, the old Roman fort here. So from Wigton I've come back to the Solway coast, and I'm midway between the village of Allenby and the town of Maryport at a very interesting Roman archaeological site, Milefortlet number 21. Now from Bowness-on-Solway, Fort Maia, where Hadrian's wall ended, there were a series of Roman forts built along the coastline to defend the coast from invasion. And as the name suggests, these forts were built every 1 Roman mile, which is slightly different to a modern mile. And these forts extended at least 25 miles south from Bowness-on-Solway. Now, Milefortlet number 21 is the only surviving site of a Roman fortlet that we have. But as the name suggests, these were small forts where they could defend the coast from invasion. And you get quite a good sense of what they would have looked like. It's quite a well-preserved site. So I'm inside the fort itself, and you can see in the ground a concrete outline which would have shown you where the buildings inside this little fort would have stood. The Romans were expert engineers, and one of the interesting things about this fort is it's not built right on the brow of the hill. The brow of the hill is just behind me, and the reason it's not built on the brow of the hill is because that wouldn't have been exactly a mile, or Roman mile, from the next fort. So that's why Mile 21 Fort is just slightly below the brow of the hill, because they were so precise at building these forts every 1 Roman mile. Another really interesting feature about this site are the incredibly well preserved salt pans. Before the invention of refrigeration, meat and fish were preserved using salt, and therefore vast quantities of salt were required in Anglo-Saxon times, when salt extraction was the 3rd biggest industry after farming and fishing. And salt was extracted by collecting seawater in tanks on the foreshore and leaving it to settle. It was then pumped into an upper tank before flowing into the pan houses, and in large iron pans the salt water was boiled, evaporating the water to produce salt crystals. And we have an incredibly well-preserved example of one of these salt pans. So from Milefortlet number 21, I'm going to make the short journey to Maryport. It's only a few miles down the coast. Now, Maryport is home to the Roman fort of Alauna. Now, this was a very important fort along the Cumbrian coast, one of the largest forts along the coastline, and it was constructed, they think, in 122 AD, so at the same time that Hadrian's wall was being constructed, and it was designed again to defend the coastline from invasion, but it was also built as a supply base to supply the forts, the defensive structures along the coastline. Now today, Maryport is home to the Senhouse Roman Museum, which is a great little museum, privately run museum, that tells you a lot about the history of the Romans in Maryport and some of the interesting archaeological finds that they've discovered at Maryport, including some incredibly well preserved Roman altars. Now, I made a video fairly recently about Maryport, and I did visit the Senhouse Roman Museum, so I'm not going to visit the museum again today. But if you are interested in that video and learning a little bit more about the Senhouse Roman Museum, then I'll put a link into this video. But as I say, Maryport was an important administrative centre and logistics centre for the Romans as they supplied this western frontier. The Senhouse Roman Museum is now housed in the old naval battery building here above Maryport, and the Roman fort sits just behind the museum. The Roman fort of Alauna was 6.5 acres in size and could accommodate 1,000 soldiers, and as I said, was an important strategic base. And to the north of this fort, a settlement developed, a Roman settlement, and that was occupied for 280 years. Today, the modern town of Maryport lies to the south of this Roman fort. So I've travelled a few miles south of Maryport and I've come to my next Roman location. And like lots of Roman locations, there isn't really that much to see, but I'm at Burrow Walls Roman Fort, which is just on the northern edge of Workington. And behind me, you've got these walls. Now, they look fairly impressive. The stones in there are actually Roman. They were taken from the fort that was on this site, but they were used to construct a medieval building. So what we're seeing here in these walls is from a medieval building that reused the Roman stone. And from what I can read online, there doesn't seem to be that much information about this particular location. So I'm afraid there's not a huge amount I can tell you about it. So just below me in the field you can see the remains of that old medieval hall built from Roman stone. This is an old railway line that used to run to Seaton, and below me we have this rather nice nature reserve looking over to the retail park, and in the distance the port of Workington. So there is just one more location that I would like to visit today in this part of the video, and that is to go to Parton, again about 20 minutes south of where I am at the moment. And at Parton we'll see one final Roman site. Welcome to St. Bridget's Church, Moresby. And this church is built on the site of an old Roman fort. So let's go and see if there's anything we can spot of the old fort. So here we have some information about the old Roman fort. And it says, you are now standing close to the area that was once the headquarters of a Roman fort. It formed part of the Roman frontier defences that guarded the coast, but little evidence of it remains today. However, if you look towards the sea, you will see the bank of earth that marked the line of the fort's defences. 2,000 years ago, you would have been surrounded by a high stone wall, some 4.5 metres, 15 feet tall, with 4 tower gateways set at intervals. Beyond the wall, there was at least one ditch that added strength to the fort's defences. So here we are on the site of what was another Roman fort. Now, to be totally honest, were it not for the fact that it's marked on a map, I would have had no idea that there used to be a Roman fort on this site. There's not much to see of it, but it's a good place to finish today's video. The plan is to continue further down the coast to Ravenglass and then up to Hardknott Fort at the top of Estelle, but that will be for another video. But I hope you've enjoyed it, exploring some more of the unusual places, unusual Roman sites here in Cumbria, ones that are not as well known, ones that still form part of the Hadrian's Wall line of defences, even though they're not actually on Hadrian's Wall. But we've come here now just at sunset and to get a lovely view over the Arrow Sea. So I'm just going to enjoy the sunset before making my way home. So thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe even. And until next time, take care and God bless.